This is more of a Wikipedia side note on Sometimes You Have to Lie, where Louise Fitzhugh is in Greenwich Village in like in the 50s and is kind of getting to know the writers there. One of the writers that she is getting to know is Mary Jane, Mrjn Meeker, who apparently under the pseudonym of Vin Packer a couple of years before they met, published a novel called Spring Fire. Spring Fire, I believe it is. Oh, I'll have to look at that. Credited as one of the first kind of lesbian pulp fiction novels of the time, which, from what it sounds like, in an era where these things were basically designed to last, they basically last a month. They're disposable, toss away crap that people would buy all sorts of places, drugstores, big, wide commercial stuff, but we're just like the lowest of the lowbrow. They're characterized as. This sold like 1.5 million copies in its first three printings, and was a phenomenon. It's like it outsold The Postman Always Rings Twice, which I think is sort of the equivalent of outselling someone like Stephen King today. It's an amazing success. Um, Now, Meeker had really mixed feelings about this, refusing to have it republished for years and years because of the ending, because it had to conform with the ending that the prescribed morality of the time, which was, as her editor told her, if we want to ship this through the mail and not have it sent back by the postal inspectors, democracy and free speech where you have postal inspectors inspecting your stuff and making their own moral judgments on stuff. You have to have one of the characters realize that they're not a lesbian, and the other one realize that they're sick or crazy. Um, by the end, it was prescribed. You have to have the unhappy ending because it's an evil lifestyle. Um, so she was fabulously successful, but it was within these really repressive codes of the time, and yeah, no, it's another thing of this is where Louise Fitzhugh, a lesbian, this is what they were kind of living in under the time. And I mean, I grew up probably when I became aware of what actually a gay person was in the 80s, which was deeply homophobic. Um, but that was even one step up from what it was in like the 50s, where it was a prosecutable. You were in danger, you would lose your job, you could lose your livelihood, you could get imprisoned. You know, there was we're a lot of the women that there's a certain number of like the professional women that Louise Fitzhugh kind of hung out with wouldn't go to bars because the bars would get raided. You women would get stopped and questioned. If you were recognized in this thing, there's potential of blackmail. There is a deep kind of like there's the whole thing of conformity. There's also the deep thing of just kind of the paranoia of the time of if someone is watching you, and if you are crossing, if you are outside of the line, crossing outside of the norms of the time, you would your whole life could be destroyed. Um, so yeah, it's sometimes you have to lie. Is this line which um, is coming through this novel? I mean, we Leslie Brody has already used it. Apparently, it actually is a direct quote from Harriet the Spy of "Sometimes you have to lie," which it's like you know it casts an interesting new light, a light that myself as you know uh, a young guy reading this novel, a young kid reading this novel in the 80s would have had no clue that that's where it's coming from because I was swimming in all the kind of the homophobia and racism and sexism of that time. I mean, and there's homophobia and racism and sexism of our own time, which we're always learning, but it was just like, I had no idea. So yeah, it's a really interesting book. Really interesting to know where Louise Fitzhugh came up from, and which makes me all the more. I've read the first chapter of Harriet the Spy. I need to go and continue along with that and continue reading as I, getting that as I'm reading this biography of its author. All right, more videos later.